Hi, this is John Bates, CEO of Eggplant, and today we're going to be talking about customer experience optimization, how we can continuously improve the customer experience and the business outcomes for your website, application, or process. Let's start off with some inalienable truths. You might say, duh, of course, but let's start with the fact that all businesses want to succeed, don't they? And all businesses want to beat their competitors. Unless there's something wrong with them, this is the basic premises of business. However, now, it's not just software's eating the world, it's apps are eating the world. And most businesses have become or are moving to be digital. And thus, it's software-based workflows, apps, websites that run most businesses' internal and external processes, and particularly their customer experiences. So to achieve excellence in customer experience, it's all about achieving excellence in digital. Now, achieving this excellence and success varies based on what your business is. Businesses measure success in different ways. So take, for example, Cook, an online retailer of frozen meals, who measure success in basket conversions, coming on, finding what you want, and buying it. Now take Cerner, a healthcare automation and solutions provider that measures success in lives saved. They have a big dashboard in their lobby that says how many lives today have been saved by their processes. And then NTT Docomo, a major Japanese media and mobile network provider, and they measure success. One of their methods is annual revenue per user, or certainly revenue per user, and avoiding churn in those users. So different ways for success. Now, in a digital world, these successes are delivered through these digital software processes, as we talked about. Now, we might ask a question, is there a way to monitor a live business? In other words, to monitor the digital software processes, their websites and apps, and determine if that business is meeting its business goals based on how its customers are interacting with it. And if it's not meeting its business goals, is it possible to automatically determine whether there's a remedy that can address that shortcoming? And furthermore, is there a way, even before you've gone live with a new version of your software process, app, or website, to determine if that's going to be successful in achieving business goals or not? In other words, trying to predict the future. Now, this is a question that has major implications for the field of software test automation, because it's usually software testing that happens before something goes live. Now, that's traditionally been very technically measured, rather than predicting business impact. In fact, these questions have a lot of impact in terms of how you monitor, test, analyze, and improve your business. So I'm going to start by looking at business and the way it interacts with its customers in the digital world in a different way. So think about a user interaction model in which we're modeling the user or the customer experience. And that model is based on a number of screens or steps. It's basically a digital twin of your application or workflow. So, one of the steps on the leftmost diagram could be, logging in. And within each of those blue boxes, there are little grey boxes, and maybe the elements involved. So it might be your username and password, pressing a button. Then you might go to an accounts page where you can go to find out about your orders, or maybe it's logging into a healthcare site where you can enter a new patient data, or whatever this might be. You're going through a number of steps with a number of elements in a user interaction model, and you're modeling all the possible paths a user can take through your digital business. Now, specifically, one of those paths we'll call a user journey. And that's one explicit path through the model. Now, that could be on an e-commerce site, doing a search, finding an item you like, putting it in your basket, checking out. And that would lead to what we might consider to be a positive business outcome. So we're driving the behavior of the customers through these user journeys to get to the positive business outcomes. Another one could be a clinician taking the correct sanitary procedures to stop sepsis happening and saving a life. Positive business outcome. And so on and so forth. It could be an insurance company. Somebody gets a quote for an insurance policy. then they actually take up the policy, positive business outcome. And there's a statistical number of positive business outcomes that you're likely to have for each of the customers that come to your site. So maybe 1 in 1,000 take out your insurance policy, for example. And you can track that. Let's look at a specific example of an interaction model. And this one's from the well-known website or mobile app TripAdvisor. And you can see that there's a number of different screens which could map very closely onto the number of different boxes in the interaction model. There's a home page with selectionable elements, Near Me Now, hotels, restaurants and flights. There's a Near Me Now page where you can find out about the same kind of thing. There's a hotels page where you can do a search on hotels based on location, dates, type and so on. A restaurant search page, a flight search page, and they're all linked together. So you can go back between them all, and there might be some other elements in the interaction model which are outside of the explicit states, such as on your iPhone or Android or whatever, you can rotate the screen or you can exit the application. Now, there's particular user journeys that you can take through this, which either a real user, you can track moving through it, or an artificial user that you've created with an AI-imbued personality might actually use this application and explore so we can monitor the customer experience. So let's have a look at a user journey. So starting off with Near Me Now, and there's certain properties such as the amount of delay that you got in providing the information. You're rotating the screen, going to rentals, going back. Oh, and we've experienced there a longer delay than was desirable. So we're monitoring not just the functionality, we're monitoring the performance and usability here. So there's one particular user journey through with some properties. Now, assessing the success of that user journey as well might relate to the positive business outcomes. So, did the customer book a restaurant? Did the customer book a rental car? How do we know whether we're doing well against the expected targets across all customers? We know what we're trying to get, but we notice actually that restaurant bookings are down. Rental car bookings are pretty much in line with expectations. So, why aren't restaurant bookings meeting targets? Is it something seasonal? Is there something going on? Or is there a customer experience issue with our application? Is there a functionality problem? Is there a performance problem? Well, we saw there might be. Is there some usability problem? Is it something about the platform that the customer is using? So great customer experience usually equates to good business results. And the opposite is also likely to be true. So, just as a throwaway statistic, 76% of checkouts are abandoned before payment happens. Now, that could be just because people get bored or do something else, but sometimes it's due to a bad customer experience. And causes of customer experience issues can be many and varied. For example, customer experience issue could be a functionality problem. Here's a little snippet from HSBC's website, which one of my colleagues took, where they tried to log in and enter login and password with some strange parameters, and the system screen went blank and locked them out. Now, that could be due to a particular platform issue. We haven't looked at how that behaves on a particular, version of the iPhone. Could be a browser issue. We haven't tested it against Chrome. Could be a versioning issue. The software that's running on this particular platform interacts with it. But there's all sorts of things going on there. Customer experience issue could be a performance problem, as we saw with the transition taking too long to load. But there's a very strong correlation between performance, customer experience, and business outcomes. So if you look, for example, performance is the number one reason given by users for deleting applications, and 53% of mobile users abandon sites that take longer than 3 seconds to load. And there's plenty of statistics ranging from Amazon. They believe that their revenue reduces by 1% for every 100 millisecond increase in response time, which is pretty incredible. The BBC loses 10% of visitors for every 1 second increase in page load times. And Staples increase conversions by 10% by reducing load time by 1 second. Google's ad revenue declines by 90 million for every 250 milliseconds, and so on and so forth. So there's plenty of examples. These could be caused by load issues, network issues, third-party issues if you're embedding them into your site, and not being aware of what's going on. Now, interestingly also, customer experience issues could be usability problems, and maybe just the way things are rendering on a particular platform or particular things that haven't been looked at. So, does it look nice? Is the gaps between the buttons? Are we getting the right feedback, do things, obscure things on the screen, I have that so often, is the way colours working, like a red font on a blue background, really making it impossible to read on a particular platform. Does the text fit in a button so you can't even read it? Are things rendering properly? Is accessibility working for those who might be partially sighted? And, does transient text stay around long enough to be read? And so on and so forth. Basically, does it look nice and can I use it? And there might be something imperceivable there. So there's all sorts of reasons why customer experience could be bad or good. And put this in the context of the fact that we're now in the world of continuous delivery and DevOps. So there's three aspects to really DevOps. There's Dev and Ops, of course, the development and testing and the operations. Development, testing, they build it and they test it pre-production. Operations look after it once it's in production. But of course, the line of business typically owns the responsibility for the business value delivered through that application. So if it's e-commerce or healthcare, or it could be telecommunications or any kind of industry, there's a line of business owner who is the owner of those positive business outcomes that come through that amazing customer experience. And you overlay all of this with the fact that we're ever getting quicker in our release. The world of the Apple app stores and the Google app stores are now driving more and more frequent releases with more and more feedback in this continuous delivery, where the time to release new applications has gone from 6 months to sort of 1 week on average. And so we're really, really squeezed. The business doesn't always know what's going on in the development world. Operations and dev don't always talk to the degree that they should in the DevOps world, and so on. So there's all sorts of things going on here. Now, technologies that are currently being used to look for different aspects of, let's say, of the customer experience, or at least actually trying to prepare to make sure the business is protected. In the development world, we typically use testing, functional testing and performance testing to check something's ready before it goes live. But that's typically looking at the code objects rather than the customer experience. Once it's in production, there's various forms of monitoring, such as synthetic monitoring, in other words, actually having an agent that tries to use the application through a particular journey, or even real user monitoring that will look at what customers are actually doing on the site in order to try and see if it's up and working. And then on the business side, the business may have a view of real user monitoring. They might also have customer analytics to see how customers' results are actually playing out. But one of the things I would observe here is that these are often siloed technologies. So they're not working together. They're focusing on a particular task, and they're often focused on technical metrics. In other words, how many bugs did we have? How many tests were there? Is the system up? Has a transaction failed? Where has it failed? And so on. So they're looking at a technical metric often rather than that end-to-end customer experience from the business outcome point of view. And what we'd like to see, I think, is that they should all share a model of desired customer experience and desired business outcome, and should test and monitor from the business point of view, from the dev point of view, and from the ops point of view from that angle. And we should be able to put all this together to spot problems, learn and improve. So how should things be in this cycle? Well, I think putting that user interaction model, that customer experience model in the center of this, gives us a focus where everybody can talk the same language. And furthermore, putting layers around this model where we're continuously testing, continuously analyzing, continuously learning, and continuously optimizing the business is very powerful. Continuous testing is all about continuously testing the customer experience and business outcomes, both pre-production, where it would typically be done by the test team, and post-production, where it would be done from the operations team, but sharing the same model. So we can continue, we can shift left and we can shift right to test before and after production. Continuous analysis and learning is looking at what experience leads to the right business outcomes. So doing continuous analysis of where customers are going, are we hitting our predicted outcomes, trying to find opportunities to fix comparing ourselves to competitors, how are they doing, and predicting the risk of going live before we go live. And then continuously optimizing the business outcomes, automatic recommendations of code changes to enhance the outcomes of user journeys. So let's look how we might do that. And this is where we get into this concept of customer experience insight. So this is, part of customer experience optimization. Being able to bring technologies and take them to the next level. So we talked about synthetic monitoring and real user monitoring, but putting these things together and linking them to an interaction model that has positive business outcomes associated with it. So looking at what real users are doing, what journeys are they actually taking in that model, and how are they doing against across all of those users against those business outcomes. So are we hitting our revenue goals? Are we hitting our customer acquisition goals? And if not, what is going wrong in those user journeys? So real user insights is giving us the insight to say, this is what our customers are doing. Synthetic user insights is then, which I'll come on to in a bit more detail later, is then able to go into those user journeys with a synthetic user imbued with an AI personality and be able to actually run that user journey so we can see from the system point of view what was the experience there. So we're getting clues and correlations across the real user base, and then we're able to zoom in and look at that, and that's giving us our customer experience insight. So we're using technology and taking it to the next level and using it together. Now those real user insights can come from effectively adding beacons to any application or website which allow us to track the behavior of users. And it shows us things around which business outcomes are being hit and which aren't, and some relationship between technology metrics and business metrics. So for example, how page load times are affecting revenue conversions, session length, bounce rate, revenue, and how performance relates to things like device browser, location, which visitors are seeing the worst performance, and it hopefully will help us to focus development and infrastructure investments. So if we have a look at a little video here, we can see across a real user insights tracking some key metrics like technical metrics like page load time, page impressions, and business metrics like revenue and conversions. And we can even do what-if analysis. So we can say if we changed our technical metrics like page load duration, what impact would that have on revenue and conversions? And then we can drill into actually user journeys and see which are the most popular user journeys, which user journeys are working. We can drill into a particular customer and see where they went. Here we've got somebody loading a basket and then checking out and booking a home delivery. And we can see what that particular customer with that demographic experienced. So that's getting real user insights. Now I talked about the synthetic user insights and about the fact that it's not just pre-production or post-production, it's continuous testing. And looking at testing from the point of view of customer experience, there's a couple of angles here. Again, back to our interaction model. And rather than having to come up with every scenario, being able to learn, as we talked about, over time, and using an artificial intelligence engine to be able to actually test those user journeys and be able to explore and, based on the data that we have, prioritize which user journeys should actually be explored and tested, and then be able to take control of any device or platform and be able to take it through as if a user is using it. So the key thing here is being able to actually look at this through the eyes of the user on any device or platform. And which journeys should we look at? Well, we should use an AI engine to help us prioritize that. So let's look at that in a bit more detail. So the concept of AI-powered continuous customer experience test prioritization. Here we can see a real interaction model running and this is based on Citigroup's digital banking application. So you can see that we've got various screens there. We've got a login screen, we've got an accounts page, we've got payments pages, and you can move between all of these different aspects of your account. And what we've got here is an AI engine walking through user journeys which it believes should be tested based on what real users have been doing on the site and where we may have encountered issues, or maybe things have not behaved in the way that we expected them to. So we should explore those journeys and figure out why. Important journeys which have been marked by the designers of the software to say these are the journeys that we absolutely want to make sure we've explored. And then also just the concept of being able to find user experience bugs, functionality bugs, performance bugs, usability bugs, and to be able to cover all aspects of the application through coverage analysis. So it's these various algorithms that work together with effectively a test recommendation engine which decides the next best test to run based on what users have really been doing, what we believe is important, how we want to achieve coverage, and to explore areas that have been uncharted, maybe where code has changed. And you can see here with our real system, it's running through some of those paths and finding bugs that we would not normally have found. Quite often, the designers of the software are not the right people to design the tests. And quite honestly, if you're looking at the data that you have available and plugging that into an AI engine, it can often reveal some quite incredible things through the eye of the user. And these interaction models are really great as a discussion forum between the different aspects of the business. So the line of business, the operations team, the test and development team have all got something to talk about, because this effectively represents a digital twin of the application. Here you can see a speeded up version of a model being built. It's the Citigroup digital banking app with each of the pages and each of the elements within each page. And then you can link that, what we saw when we were automating the applications, you can link that then to a automation engine which can drive the application for real and allow this AI engine to explore. Now, behind the scenes, that AI engine needs to call out to an automation engine, which is a very specific kind, a customer experience automation engine. And I like to think of this requirement as one of fusion. You need to be able to fuse a number of different things together to be able to do customer experience. And this is really looking at the world in a very different way. So take that interaction model, and you need to be able to test that across mobile, across desktop, across server sometimes. And you need to, customer experience combines functionality, as we looked at, performance, sometimes usability, and the ability to call out through APIs, through the user interface, even through voice-driven interfaces. So it's this concept of fusion, and you need to be able to, so that you don't get these problems where something doesn't work on one platform and works on another, you need to make sure you've tested on every platform with every variant. So you really need this matrix, if you like, this device lab of all the different kinds of platforms you want it to run on, and to have that interaction model tested across all of those platforms in parallel through this combination, fusion of functionality, performance, usability. You also need to be able to simulate different network scenarios. So you want to make sure this is working well on 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, and so on, and all the different kinds of networks that you want it to work on, because you don't want to find out later that people have abandoned your application because it doesn't work well on one of your target environments. I'm going to just show you a little bit more about the concept of voice-driven as well here, and I'll be quiet in a minute because this is going to speak, and this is actually an example using Alexa, where you're going to see.
Alexa, can you tell me the share price of Amazon?
As of 12:13 p.m. Eastern, Amazon.com traded at $1,150.02, up 0.74% since previous close.
Now, this is a great example of Fusion, because what you've seen there is the customer experience testing system generate voice to drive Alexa, to do voice recognition on Alexa, and to fuse that in, because that's only part of this particular workflow. It's then looking up the actual share price using another application, which it's automating the driving of, and it's going to compare them. So imagine that you've got a voice-driven interface which is giving you some feedback as part of a workflow, and you want to make sure that's actually right, because if it's not, then it could lead to bad customer experience. So you might need to drive that voice, take in the results, look the data up, take those results in, compare, and so on. So this is the concept of Fusion. Lots of interfaces, lots of platforms, lots of approaches, all targeted through the eyes or the brain or the consciousness of the customer. So finally, this concept of getting predictive release insights. How do we know if an application is actually going to be successful? And we talked about the fact that usually there's lots of technical metrics in the traditional approaches to monitoring, testing, analytics. But in this case, how can we roll those together and get a view, a simple, is it good to go view? And that again links back to a customer interaction model. So assuming we've got this customer interaction model, our AI engine has tested the functionality, performance, usability, collected all those results for each of those metrics, and then rolled that up to give us a release rating, and compared this specifically against previous releases that look like this one, and their impact on customer satisfaction and customer experience. So we know, for example, in this case, that when we have 3.5 eggplants out of 5, that's probably not good enough. In the past, that hasn't led to an increase in customer satisfaction. So we've probably got to drive for 4 eggplants, which actually means improving the coverage and doing a little bit more customer experience testing before we release. However, once we're at 4 eggplants, our experience shows us we're good to go, and customers are going to like it. So that brings the final part of this customer experience optimization story, which is all about putting an interaction model at the center of things, being able to monitor a live application of which this model is a digital twin, getting real user insights as early warning to problems, then zooming in with synthetic monitoring to get those customer experience insights. We can recreate all of those customer journeys, and we can prioritize any testing of the customer experience in those particular user journeys using an AI-based engine, and then we can drive on any platform to make sure we've got the full test coverage necessary to achieve fantastic customer experience and business outcomes. And that's exactly what some of those customers I mentioned at the beginning have experienced. Cook, the online retailer of frozen meals who create remarkable food, saw an increase in their online revenues by 7% by identifying how those technical behaviours were impacting their revenue conversions and identifying optimizations. NTT Docomo actually are very interesting because they continuously test across Japan the end-to-end customer experience. So they don't just test network metrics or server metrics. They actually have applications being used end-to-end on different networks and different locations. And the goal, of course, there is that increasing revenue per user and proactively addressing customer experience issues before they cause customer churn. And Cerner, they measure their success by live save. They identified continuous delivery, continuous testing, and continuous optimization through the eyes of the clinician as key. And they've accelerated delivery times by 23% of processes, and they're meeting the challenge of rapidly changing regulations by increasing automation and reducing the technical expertise required. So where does this all go next? Well, a great example is NASA are testing their next generation interfaces on the Orion space vehicle through the eye of the user, through that user experience lens. It's the first vehicle that's going to have a single pane of glass interface to control communications with mission control, analyze sensors on board, space sensors, and so on. And of course, their key mission outcome is to get humans to Mars and deliver them back safely. So how does Eggplant fit in? We haven't really talked about Eggplant. We've talked a little bit about, a very interesting approach here, but we very much believe in this school of doing things. We believe in putting user journeys at the center of things. We believe in bringing together the development, ops, and the business. And we believe in testing, monitoring, and continuously improving business outcomes and looking at the world through the lens of business outcomes. So we want to transform testing and monitoring to help people create amazing products that delight users and drive business outcomes. And we're all about continuously testing and monitoring the full customer experience and quantifying how technology impacts those outcomes. If you want to find out more about us, please go to eggplant.io. Thank you very much for your attention. This is John Bates, over and out.